Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Everything looks okay from my end. I would do this live, but the Wi-Fi coverage to the device that I use is not necessarily working all that well, and the one at the hotel is not necessarily the greatest, so I will push it up after it is done. I was going to start with Brett Kavanaugh. There were multiple stories involving or dealing with Brett Kavanaugh that I wanted to talk about and have this kind of discussion on. What to do next after Brett Kavanaugh has been confirmed, because Brett Kavanaugh has been confirmed. And B, why was it a person from the Bush years, radioactive? George Bush left office with like a 30% poll rating. Why wasn't people more radioactive? I mean, these were the people who were the lawyers and the judges the lawyers that were around George Bush as he was torturing human beings, breaking the law, and as he was breaking the law with warrantless mass surveillance. Those were for other videos. The video I want to talk about today is more terrifying than anything that's taken place from the standpoint of Brett Kavanaugh. The United Nations brought together a body of scientists from all over the world, and that body of scientists from all over the world wrote a report, a hair on fire report, that is essentially saying in 22 years this planet will face crisis. It will come to a crisis point. What they're realizing is that the models that were put in place over the past X number of years were wrong. They weren't aggressive enough. There are certain factors that may come into play that may push the temperature beyond what they thought it was going to go. They're talking about temperatures in a range of 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above, you could say, I guess, that line of the pre-industrial mark. And they're talking about essentially, because of climate disturbances, a certain degree of gross domestic product being lost, a certain amount of governments potentially collapsing based on the climate effects that are taking place, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the floods, the droughts, the things that are pushing human beings into other areas like refugees. These things are going to have severe consequences. All of these things driven by human action on this planet that's creating a climate that is not compatible to that same human life. We're doing this to ourselves. This is us. We're killing ourselves. I often have people wag their finger at me saying, dude, you don't quite get how awesome capitalism is. And my main argument to them is, if you're destroying the planet, it doesn't matter how awesome you think capitalism is. It's a failure on its face. You're destroying the world. And you're doing so for something that's not real. And you even more so giving the spoils that are being generated in this economic system, in this system, to a top 1%. Like, I find that amazing. We're killing ourselves for the top 1%. They need to eat cake, and they need to have everything that they can have at their disposal, access to the things that they need, even access to the things that they don't particularly need, even resources that can be used to make sure other people have access to the things that they need are sitting somewhere in quantum land of zeros and ones of somebody's bank account. There are real things in this world. One of those real things is climate and the habitable space to which you dwell. This is the New York Times reading of this report. I'm doing this video first, and I'm going to try to keep this video concise, because this video is probably one of the most important videos that I would ever do. May not be my best from the standpoint of how I come across and the things that I say in the way that I say it, my secular sermon, but the content is dramatically and radically important. Major climate report describes strong risk of crisis as early as 2040. That is in our lifetime. God willing, that is in our lifetime. Or maybe not God willing. A landmark report from the United Nations Scientific Panel on Climate Change paints a far more dire picture of the immediate consequences of climate change than previously thought and says that avoiding the damages requires transforming the world economy at a speed and scale no documented historic precedent. What they're saying is the capitalistic system needs to be radically changed if we're going to avert this, and yet not necessarily confident that they will be able to avert it. A rational species. Are we a rational species? We're killing ourselves. Are we rational? The report issued on Monday by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a group of scientists convened by the United Nations to guide the world leaders, describes a world of worsening food shortages and wildfires and mass die-offs of coral reefs as soon as 2040, a period well within a lifetime of much of the global population. This report is quite a shock and quite concerning, says Bill Hare, an author of a previous IPCC report and physicist with Climate Analytics, a nonprofit organization. We were not aware of this just a few years ago. The report was the first to be commissioned by the world leaders under the Paris Agreement 2015 Pact Nations to Fight Global Warming. The authors found that if greenhouse gas emissions continue at the current rate, the atmosphere will warm up by as much as 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above the pre-industrial levels by 2040, inundating coastlines and intensifying droughts and poverty. Previous work had focused on estimating the damage if average temperatures were to rise by a larger number, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, just because that was the threshold scientists previously considered for the most severe effects of climate change. Avoiding the most serious damage requires transforming the world economy within just a few years, said the author, who estimates that the damage will cost $54 trillion. But while they conclude that it's technically possible to achieve rapid changes, require 2.7 degrees of warming, they concede that it may be politically unlikely. Think about what's being said here. People who make determinations about our world, who investigate, who actually go and look and try to figure out what's true, looking at various reports from all of these various scientists. I'm going to go into the number of scientists and everything and reports that they're looking through. But coming back from this saying, we're killing ourselves. We convene a group of people to go and look at a task, look at something, and they come back and saying, we're killing ourselves. And we're doing so under a profit motive. Understand what's being said. I can't say it any other way. For all intents and purposes, we are ending human life on this planet, or making human life that much more difficult and inhospitable. Well, making this planet that much more inhospitable to human life. And you have to ask the question of why is that taking place? Why are we doing that? What is the reason? What is the rationale? Why would we do something like that with a rational society, with a rational group of people? Intentionally, or let's not even say intentionally, willfully do things to kill themselves. Are we a rational society? Now, the report goes into this idea of carbon tax, like monstrous numbers of carbon tax. For instance, the report says that heavy taxes on prices of carbon dioxide emissions, perhaps as high as $27,000 per ton by 2100, would be required. To put it in context, Obama only wanted 50. Trump cut it down to 7. My argument often deals with this thing of, what is the point? People making this case that Trump pulled the United States off the climate accord. So what? I understand, yes, I would prefer him to stay in it. But the idea that hitting the wall at 60 miles per hour, yes, it's slower than going 90, but I'm dead just the same. It's kind of like this, $50 or 7. Yes, 50 may be better, but 50 doesn't do it. And if it doesn't do it, what's the point? I'm making a point that the goal in this is to fix this issue, not to give lip service to fixing the issue with this kind of papering over of reality. I mean, come on. It's shifting deck chairs on the Titanic. And it's not, don't misunderstand me here. This is not a defense of Trump. This is more so of an indictment of Obama on this, or the Democratic Party on this. If what you're doing is ineffective to a problem that is going to destroy the world, then what does it matter? Yes, it may look good. Yes, for political reasons, you can say I'm doing X, but I'm talking about the reality, not the politics. This report is saying in 22 years, this world is going to face disasters by human causes. And yet, simultaneously admits there's probably nothing we could do. Culturally, we're fucked. Culturally, we are, to use a scientific term, fucked. The report was written and edited by 91 scientists from 40 countries who analyzed more than 6,000 scientific studies. The Paris Agreement set out to prevent warming of more than 3.6 degrees above pre-industrial levels, long considered a threshold for the most severe social and economic damage from climate change. But the heads of the small island nations, fearful of rising sea levels, had also asked scientists to examine the effects of 2.7 degrees warming. Absent aggressive action, many effects once expected only several decades in the future will arrive by 2040. And at lower temperature, the report shows, it's telling us we need to reverse emission trends and turn a U-turn world economy on a dime. To prevent 2.7 degrees of warming, the report said greenhouse pollution must be reduced by 45% from 2010 levels by 2030 and 100% by 2050. It also found that by 2050, the use of coal as an electricity source would have to drop from nearly 40% today to between 1 and 7%. Renewables, such as wind and solar, will make up about 20% of the electricity mix today, which has to be increased by much as 67%. The report makes it clear there is no way to mitigate climate change without getting rid of coal, said Drew Shindle, a climate scientist at Duke University and author of the report. The World Coal Association disputed this conclusion that stopping global warming calls for end of coal use. Why are you asking the World Coal Association? Why are you asking the World Coal Association? Why do they have anything to say about this? Meaning, not so much that they won't have something to say about it. Why are you listening? It doesn't matter. What they're saying is irrelevant to this process. You're giving a report on what scientists are saying, and you're putting up this World Coal Association as if it has some legitimacy in the debate or the conversation. They don't. They're political. The report is literally saying the world economy needs to change on a dime, and you go and talk to somebody who has a fiscal interest in ensuring that coal remains the energy of use. And you're asking them as if you're going to get an honest answer from an organization that is set to protect coal. What a fail. What a fail. There are not two sides of this argument. I'm sorry. The scientists here are being very clear in what they're saying about what needs to take place from the standpoint of a transformation of our system of order of things. Neither of the parties are dealing with this, nor will anybody pick this report up. I can't say I'm certain, but I will be hard pressed to believe that MSNBC, definitely not Fox News, is going to mention the fact that human species within 22 years is on the brink of disaster. Our media. The report emphasized the potential role of a tax on carbon emissions. A price on carbon is central to prompting the mitigation, the report concludes. It estimates that to be effective, such a price would have to range between $135 to $5,500 per ton of carbon dioxide pollution in 2030, and from $690 to $27,000 per ton by 2100. By comparison, under Obama administration, the government economists estimated that an appropriate carbon tax would be in the range of $50. I wonder why. Where's your bias? Is your bias to fixing the issue or just making it look like you're doing something about the issue? The report details economic damage expected should the governments fail to enact policies to reduce emissions. The United States, it said, could lose roughly 1.2% of gross domestic product for every 1.8 degrees of warming. In addition, it said the United States, along with Bangladesh, China, Egypt, India, Indonesia, Japan, and the Philippines and Vietnam, are home to 50 million people who would be exposed to the effects of increased coastal flooding by 2040 if the 2.7 degrees of warming occurs. At 3.6 degrees of warming, the report predicts a disproportionately rapid evacuation of people from the tropics. In some parts of the world, national borders will become irrelevant, said Aromar Revi, director of the Indian Institute for Human Settlements and author of the report. You could set up a wall to try to contain 10,000 and 20,000 and 1 million people, but not 10 million. The report also finds that in likelihood if governments fail to avert the 2.7 degrees warming, another scenario is possible. The world could overshoot the target, heat up by more than 3.6 degrees, and then through a combination of lowering emissions and deploying carbon capture technology could bring the temperature back down to 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. All of that's conjecture. All of that is conjecture. The research is straightforward in regards to what it's doing to predict. But it's been worse than what the scientists have been forecasting up to this point. I don't know why they think it wouldn't be the same trend going forward. Meaning that that's an estimate. It's very possible that the things that are taking place now will go far beyond the 2 degree scenario, 2.7, or the 3.7 scenario. These are estimates. Don't mistake the model for the actual world. I'm saying that to say that this idea that we can overshoot it and then come back acts as if the world is some kind of thing that they can plug in. It is not. Why would you want to overshoot that mark? And what would be the impetus for governments to overshoot that mark? I'm talking about a rational society here. Look, all I'm saying, we're at a particular point. We're at a tipping point where they're literally telling us that our economic model is destroying the world itself. And we need to do something to radically change the way we're interacting with our environment. I'm not faithful on this. There's another part to this that the report didn't mention, or that they didn't mention in the New York Times. Animal agriculture. This goes beyond just coal. This also goes to this thing of animal agriculture. Some of this is a culture issue. This idea that we eat and kill animals, and the way that we eat and kill animals, and the way that we store animals. It's almost like a karmic punishment for the way that we're behaving on this planet with regards to life. We treat it as if it's an irrelevant thing. It's an actual living thing that breathes, that has family, that cares about its offspring, and that is terrified of death. Otherwise, it wouldn't run so. We're killing things, and we're eating the carcass of the things that we kill. Maybe there's a karmic punishment for that. The New York Times didn't mention that. The belief is that this is half, if not more, of a driver to climate change than coal. So put that in perspective. We're talking about a culture change. I don't know how you do that. At the very least, I can give you the news and give you a heads up. I don't think mainstream media will. So, I guess that's why I have a job. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. Thanks all.